Welcome to Fresh Ground Theology's The Weekend Cup. Order yourself a fresh cup of coffee, pull up a chair, and join us as we explore some of the most fascinating saints and figures from church history. In our previous episodes, we explored the early life of Saint Boniface and his dramatic confrontation at Donner's Oak. But Boniface's legacy was not built merely on dramatic moments. It was built through patient spiritual construction. Boniface understood something many people miss about spiritual warfare. Confronting darkness is only one part of the mission. The other part is building faithful Christian communities capable of resisting that darkness over generations. And that required structure. As Christianity spread through Germanic territories, enormous problems emerged. In many places, the church was disorganized. Some priests lacked education entirely. Pagan customs lingered beneath Christian language. Local rulers manipulated church offices for political purposes. Boniface saw clearly that if the church remained weak and fragmented, paganism would simply reassert itself in new forms. So he began building systems designed to preserve theological stability and spiritual formation. He established dioceses throughout Germanic lands. He organized church leadership. He convened councils to reform clergy and address corruption. He worked closely with Rome while navigating relationships with Frankish rulers like Charles Martel and Pepin the Short. This is not merely administrative work to Boniface. He believed civilizations themselves were spiritually shaped. If pagan worship structures had once discipled the nations into darkness, the Christian institutions needed to disciple those same nations into fidelity to Christ. That included education. Boniface cared deeply about theological literacy because he believed truth mattered spiritually. False teaching was not merely intellectual error. It produced spiritual confusion and moral decay. So, he emphasized doctrinal clarity and moral discipline constantly. One of the most important centers associated with Boniface's mission was Fulda Abbey, founded by his disciple Sturm. Fulda became far more than a monastery. It became a center for prayer, manuscript preservation, scholarship, missionary training, and Christian formation. Through places like Fulda, Boniface's influence extended far beyond his own lifetime. And this reveals another aspect of Boniface's worldview. He believed Christian formation required embodied community. Prayer, liturgy, fasting, study, discipline were not optional spiritual accessories. They were means through which believers were shaped into people capable of resisting spiritual corruption. Modern Christianity sometimes treats discipleship primarily as information transfer. Boniface understood it more holistically. He believed worship practices, rhythms of life, habits, and community structures all shaped allegiance. In other words, he understood that people are formed liturgically long before they are formed intellectually. And pagan societies already possess liturgies. They have rituals and symbols and sacred spaces and communal practices that reinforce spiritual loyalties. Boniface sought to replace those with Christian worship centers on Christ. That process was slow and exhausting. Boniface's surviving letters reveal a man carrying immense burdens. He dealt with political instability, dealt with spiritual compromise, false teaching, and logistical challenges, as well as constant danger. He frequently requested prayer from fellow Christians. That human side matters. Sometimes saints become flattened into stained glass caricatures. But Boniface struggled, worried, and persevered through very real difficulties. Yet he never abandoned the mission. Even in old age, Boniface continued traveling and preaching because he believed the stakes were eternal. He viewed history itself as moving toward the universal reign of Christ over the nations. Every church established, every convert discipled, and every pagan stronghold dismantled represents part of that larger spiritual conflict unfolding across history. And again, Boniface did not see this as abstract theology. He believed spiritual beings genuinely sought influence over nations and peoples through false worship and violence and corruption and deception, that worldview gave urgency to everything he did. It also explains why Boniface remained so committed to reform within the church itself. He knew corruption inside the church could become just as spiritually destructive as paganism outside it. So he fought for holiness, he fought for discipline and orthodoxy relentlessly, and eventually that mission would cost him his life. In our final episode, we'll examine the martyrdom of Boniface and why his legacy still speaks powerfully into the modern world. Thank you for listening to Fresh Ground Theology's The Weekend Cup. Come back next time and listen as we continue to explore saints and figures from church history.